It is best not to seek conflict.
Conflict comes your way. You don't have to start conflict, but there are times when you do have to finish it. The highest choice in my world is the path of peace, love, prosperity, joy, and abundance. The path of peace, the path of a higher vibration, the path of a higher civility. Sometimes that has to take a pause for other things that come your way. I find often in my experience, silence is the best response for matters that are not worth my time. However, there was a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. I don't have the exact quote here, but the substance of the quote is that sometimes silence is the same as consent. And there are certain things that you represent that when others mischaracterize that information or that point of view, then the proper response is to answer it, regardless of the outcome. Because, again, silence can be consent. You just have to know when to be silent and when to engage. You have to know the difference, and you have to say that some things that you commit to are important enough in the time that you invested into it, that the integrity of what you represent must be upheld through clarification and reinforcement. So that is why it is wise on occasion to respond to inquiries that are not necessarily malicious or truly adversarial, but to simply set the record straight so that the clarity of what you put out, the integrity of what you put out, as you understand it, endures. So that's why I think it's wise to answer questions about things like spirituality, diet, society, how we govern ourselves, how we live as a collective. There are very important questions in life that require dialogue, and the dialogue may be messy at times, but the dialogue should go forward. And if we run away from the dialogue when it is most important to have it, then we undermine the very virtues and aspirations that we say we hold dear. So, go forth and engage, because I know I will, when it's appropriate and when it is relevant to the course and cause to which I've committed. Do not misunderstand my positions on engagement as an endorsement of physical warfare or violent action of a physical nature against nations, against groups, and against peoples. That's not my belief at all. What I'm referring to is conflict of the intellect, conflict of the spirit, where the matters of the heart, the matters of the conscience has to be balanced out. And if we do those things right, then we can actually be in alignment with a correct reading of Sun Tzu in The Art of War that talks not so much about physical conflict, but about avoiding conflict by using proper strategic action so that in the end there is peaceful settlement between all parties. And if we can have dialogue where we're not afraid to go forth with our opinions and our point of view, whatever our positions may be, And then we continue to work on the basis of civility. However we define that. Sometimes we define that loosely. Sometimes we have standards of civility that we have to comport to. But however strongly we feel about these matters and these topics, they do not have to get to the level where we pursue an imperial point of view, a colonial point of view, or a point of view where we want to disenfranchise others physically and by force. And so, engaging in battle is a useful thing for us to find truth. But when it crosses over into the third dimensional realm, the physical realm, and it results in the removal of people's life existence in this realm, that's where things have gone too far. One of the things that I have surmised from my spiritual studies is that passion needs to be balanced with rationality. That's why I don't jump out here and leap into the camera, so to speak, with what I feel. Because the true art form in spirituality is about balance. You got to know when to go to war and fight your adversaries, and you got to know when to pull back and observe and advise. And you got to know when to be in between and just work with both sides of tension or competing temptation. And so, in the supreme valley of the Ascended Masters, that's what we do and what we aspire to do, is to find that balance. Right? Right. It's a single geese sitting here listening. It's awesome. But you seek to have that balance. It's called a level-headedness. Try to be level-headed. Not too hot, not too cold. But never 50-50, but just the right proportion. A lot more of this and a little bit of this. And sometimes you got to say, okay, if I need to become a warrior, I need a lot of warrior and just a little bit of the peacemaker. But you need to know when war is done. And sometimes war only lasts for like 5 minutes. When war is done, then the great diplomat and peacemaker comes back into prominence, and the warrior then retires and rests for a minute. And so that's why when we're talking about spirituality versus religion, you'll find that some spiritual people will curse, will argue with the best of them. We will go into combat verbally, not physically, unless it's self-defense. But we will engage, right? Whereas a religious person will not. I once had a person tell me, it was in a place I worked, and she was my boss, and she was like, I was trying to tell her about Christianity back when I was into that, and she was like, yeah, you turn the other cheek and you get slapped on that side too. Now, I didn't think it was funny, but now that I say this right now out of my mouth, you know, that's a pretty interesting, gutsy thing for my boss to say. But yes, but she was very wise, and I didn't appreciate her wisdom at the time. And that's the thing, in spirituality, it's more about an observation of reality. That was a spider. Anyway, an observation of reality. And you observe reality and you work with the reality, rather than always seek to bend the reality to your will, or to try to interpret the reality according to a doctrine.